Your life journey doesn't stand still, and neither should your wealth. Welcome to Wealth on the Move, the podcast. Welcome back to another episode of Wealth on the Move, the podcast. I'm your host, president and founder of Hoffman Wealth Management, Will Hoffman. And today we're starting something new that I'm hoping is going to perpetuate into, at the very least, a quarterly, probably more frequently, topic. And that's because there's so many books written about money. You know, in 1440, Gutenberg invented the movable printing press, and it just started a firestorm of knowledge sharing and education. And money was not missed there. And there's so many books written about money, some good, some not so good. And there's one author in particular that I have been following for a long time that we have on with us to talk about his new book, The Soul of Wealth. So I do want to introduce you to Dr. Daniel Crosby. He's Orion's Chief Behavioral Officer. We're going to let him tell us a little bit about what that is. He is a renowned behavioral finance expert and psychologist, and also a New York Times best-selling author for books such as The Personal Benchmark, Laws of Wealth, and The Behavioral Investor. But today we're going to talk about his new book, The Soul of Wealth. Dr. Crosby, welcome to Wealth on the Move, the podcast.
Will, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. I've followed your work for a while now. I was really excited to get to meet you in kind of the bastion of financial mistakes and a constant experiment in money psychology when we were in Las Vegas, both attending the Think Advisor Media Awards ceremony. You guys cleaned up pretty nice there that evening, huh?
Yeah, we did great. It was a good night.
Yeah. We took home a little hardware ourselves for the Think Advisor luminaries for Advisors with Heart for some of our charity work. So that was a fun evening and a fun weekend. But again, kind of ironic that we finally got to meet each other at the probably the worst place, actually maybe the best place to demonstrate financial psychology in Las Vegas.
Did you lose any money Did you lose any money?
I'm sure I did. I had a pretty good day the following day at the blackjack table.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we're going to talk about something in one of your favorite chapters about financial decisions that are made that aren't financial decisions at all. So I'll reference this again, but I'm pretty lucky that I married my wife because she does not like to gamble, and she kind of governs my competitive spirit whenever things aren't going well. And when things are going well, she kind of circles back to the table and grabs a little off to make sure I don't give it all back. And so we typically, if things are going well, they go really well because I don't realize how well they're going until I'm sick of play.
There you go.
So, but before we get deep into the book, can you tell me a little bit about your role as Orion's Chief Behavioral Officer? And that's kind of a unique role that I'd like for you to explain a bit more about.
Sure thing. So I am a psychologist by education. My Ph.D. is in psychology, and I actually went to school thinking I would be a therapist, but then have spent my whole career on Wall Street and working with financial institutions, helping people make better decisions with their money. Okay. And so that takes a couple of forms. And in my role at Orion, one of the things that I do is I work with talented advisors such as yourself to help their clients. So I basically train the trainers. I train the advisors through a variety of educational programming on how to connect with their clients, on how to talk to their clients, on how to comfort their clients when they're scared or uncertain. And, you know, we know from the research, we can talk more about that if you'd like, but we know from the research that the highest and best use of a financial advisor is to keep you from getting in your own way.
Sure.
And so we try and make the advisors better at the thing that they do best. So that's a big part of my role there. Another exciting piece of my job is I get to design technology. So we are a technology firm, first and foremost. And so we have built things like a risk tolerance questionnaire that takes your personality into account when talking about how to allocate assets. You know, we've built goals-based wealth management technology that helps you better visualize, you know, where that wealth is going and helps you stay the course. We've come up with
more than Harry Markowitz's bubble chart that we all learned on 25 years ago or 22 years ago.
Yeah. And, we've gotten to do fun stuff like we've developed assessments for married couples to talk about their financial priorities and their values and see where they're the same and see where they're different and try to avoid fights because we know that, we know that money is a primary source of separation and divorce and contention in relationships. And so, yeah, my role is really a mix of sort of public facing, public speaking, PR type work, creating content for advisors to become better at their jobs, and designing technology to help investors.
Yeah. And it's, I guess as an advisor to begin, thank you for the work that you do. I've been reading your books since they've been being published and in this profession, because one of my favorite books when I was starting to learn all this was The Millionaire Next Door. And how our behaviors have more of an impact on our money than, we all think that buying this one stock or this one mutual fund or ETF is going to change our financial trajectory for the rest of our lives. But it's our behaviors that change and create that trajectory. And I learned that from that book. And, you've been able to deliver the science and the knowledge behind all of that through the books of yours that I've read. But you're right. Wealth isn't just numbers. And that's sort of what you cover in the Soul of Wealth, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I had written three books on sort of the blocking and tackling of, allocating assets, picking a good stock, creating a robust portfolio, staying out of your own way. And as I'm sure there's really kind of only so many ways you can say that. There's really, at some point, there's really only so many ways to say, be patient, be long-term, diversify, stay the course.
Right.
And, so what I started to notice, though, was that we were in this weird point in human history. Will, when the U.S. was founded, 85% of the world was living in poverty. Today, that number is like 8.5%.
Wow.
So capitalism has really helped to raise all boats. And, we're living in a period of unprecedented wealth and prosperity globally. And yet we also have this mental health crisis and this loneliness epidemic, and even life expectancy being shortened because of deaths of despair and things like this. So it's this weird juxtaposition of unprecedented levels of wealth and unprecedented levels of loneliness and sadness and disconnection. And so I wanted to write a book that sort of helped to bridge that gap and say, how can we think about money in ways that enrich us in the most enduring ways and not just to make an incremental buck?
Yeah. Well, if I understand it through my reading of the Soul of Wealth, the understanding of the why behind wealth is almost more important than, what you can buy or the how of folks' wealth.
Yeah, the why is so important to me. Not only does it drive good behavior, it also drives joy and contentment and sort of joy in the journey of putting together a life and a financial life. And it's just something that wasn't well talked about. I mean, there's lots of books. There's lots of books that can tell you how to pick a stock or diversify a portfolio. I think there's far fewer books that say, okay, look, you had a little success. How can you keep that from harming you, or how can you use that success in a way that's truly enriching?
Yeah. Well, and we know there's plenty of books that are written about delivering bad financial advice or scaring us about our wealth. And that's, you could, and then in the advent of technology, I scroll Audible more than I walk through the shelves of Barnes and Noble, but there's far more, the end is coming. Buy this because the market's going to crash. And it's I've predicted the last few crashes, and trying to scare us into thinking the next one's upon us is more of the goal than appreciating our wealth and learning from how we accumulated it. You mentioned something, though, about behaviors. What role did you find that behavior is playing in building and maintaining wealth and some of the mistakes folks make?
Yeah, so my first solo book is called The Laws of Wealth. And the first half of that book is sort of these 10 commandments of investor behavior. And I was really intentional about the ordering of those, somewhat in order of their importance, but the number one chapter, the first chapter there, is called You Control What Matters Most. And Will, I know you've experienced this as someone who works in finance. When people meet someone like you or me, oh, what do? You tell them, I'm an advisor, I work in finance. They go, oh, well, what's the market like? What's
Right.
the market going to do this year? We got a new president. How's the market going to react to that?
It
What's
seemed
the
like it was
Fed?
every holiday conversation this year was, what's the market going to do with the new president, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What's the Fed going to do? What's the market going to do? What's the president going to do? And all of this stuff has all of these sorts of questions are concerned for externalities, right? They're things that are A, unknowable,
Sure.
B, uncontrollable, and C, completely like outside of our power, like disempowering because we can't do anything about them. And if you think about when President Trump won the first time, it's a good example, a good recent example of how hard it is to get this right. Most people did not think that he would win. Like very
Right.
few people thought that he would win the first time. And then among the people who thought he would win, most of them thought it spelled bad things for the economy. Well, we had a nice run under the
Sure.
first Trump presidency. And so it's hard to predict the future. And then it's even harder to predict the future correctly and then to predict what the fallout from the future will be. And so I found that people were always worried about these things that were outside of their control, and it left them feeling skittish and nervous and uncertain. But to your original question, what we found is that the things that best predict someone's ability to cross that financial finish line are all the unsexy, boring things that they control.
Right.
It's like, have you maximized the engine of your wealth, which is your talents, your skills, your brain power, your educational attainments? Have you maximized your earning potential by learning a new skill, by going back to school, by doing whatever you need to do, by networking, right? That's the number one thing you can drive wealth is to just, maximize your own earning potential. Are you saving every 2 weeks when you get paid? Are you staying the course? Are you being patient? Are you diversifying? Like all of these things that we control absolutely are the things that are deeply predictive of whether or not we're going to make it. And yet we act as though it's all of these macro considerations that we don't control and
Right.
that we can't know. And so I just wanted people to take the power back. Like, look, don't ask me what the president's going to do. I don't know
Yeah.
what the president's
Or the
going to do.
future of Bitcoin or something, right? It's more, you almost want to return that question with, well, what have you done this year to maximize your ability to earn?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll just say, hey, I have no idea, but I'll tell you what I do know. I do know that your financial future is very much within your power, and here's
Mhm.
what it looks like, right?
Well,
So,
and
yeah,
our system's built around helping folks understand what matters to them, their
mm,
why. And I know it's kind of but why do you want this wealth? And there's no wrong answer there. The answer could be, I would love to own a McLaren. All
mhm,
right, great. That's why you want to earn. Let's figure that out. Let's figure out how to save. That's our job.
mhm,
Your job is to determine the why and what matters to you and your family, and for us to condone the behaviors and to help maximize what you can produce with those behaviors. And that's so I'm glad you said that, because there's the difference, or what plays into our values and our financial decisions are often overlooked. How do you think our listeners, how do they identify their values? And there's one chapter, we're going to talk about some of my favorite chapters here in a second, but there was one chapter you titled "Show Me Your Budget and I'll Show You Your Values"
yeah,
in
yeah,
the Soul of Wealth. And I thought that was a great way to kind of give folks an indication of what's important to them. It's what they're spending their money on.
yeah. So I think I think a lot of times where there's a difference, what that chapter is all about is that there's a difference between stated or aspirational values and lived values. And
Okay.
that's what your budget can show you. So I think if you ask the average person, a couple of the examples I give in the book, you ask the average person, like, what's important to you? And they're going to say things like family and good health and things like this. And they say, okay, well, let's look at Daniel Crosby's budget and see how much he values family. Well, he left a lot of vacation days on the table, right? The average American leaves 9.5 vacation days on the table each year. That's inconsistent with valuing self-care and family, because if you valued those things, you would take that time and go be with your family, right? So
Right.
there's a discrepancy between what you profess to value and how you're actually living. If I said, look, I value good health, and they said, well, that's a lot of Chick-fil-A. That's a lot of Chick-fil-A. Your Chick-fil-A line item for 2024 was pretty steep there,
Yeah.
buddy. Tell me about that. And you go, oh, geez, So I do think in terms of sort of the difference between how we're living and how we want to be living, the budget is this really like incredible BS detector
Yeah.
where we sort of lie to ourselves about what we value. In terms of getting people to just talk about their goals, even their stated goals, though, this is harder than most people think. So without going too deep into mimetic theory, we are social creatures. We're herd creatures. And a lot of times we would profess to value something or profess to want something just because other people have it. And you see this a lot when you say, use your McLaren example. So my neighbor has a McLaren. Like
Okay.
my neighbor has a McLaren, and it's awesome.
Right.
And so, when I go on a walk and I see his McLaren, I'm like, yikes, I want one of those. But I think if you sat down, if you were my advisor and you sat down with me and you said, hey, Daniel, what do you want? I'd go, I want a McLaren. You go, well, tell me why you want a McLaren. I'm like, well, my neighbor has one and it looks pretty sweet. I'm like, okay, tell me what else you value. Well, really, I want to spend more time with my kids. I got 3 kids and they're growing up, and, on and on. You go, well, there's a tension there.
Sure.
If, the 300 grand it takes to buy a McLaren, like that would also buy you some more time with your kids. What about that? So I think a lot of times when people are asked about their financial goals, they'll sort of default to stuff they've seen, material things they've seen other people have, which is not bad, but it may not be the highest good.
Right.
And I think we also do things like we pick a round number. You'll talk to people and you go, oh, what do you, what's your financial goal? I want $10 million. Like, okay, well, why 10 and not 7 and not 12? Like, well,
Right.
I just think, a
Or
lot of us,
you ask them an age, when do you want to retire? And they give you the answer that the government has given us. Well,
right.
I was 66 and 7 months is when I want to retire. Well, why? That's when the government says I can start to access Social Security. So it becomes is that really your goal, or are you trying to mold your life into those goals that are stated for us?
That's a perfect example. And this is where people get kind of disconnected because they pick something arbitrary, like, I want to retire when I'm 65 or 66 or whatever. And it's like that number that the government arrives at is an artifact of a very certain set of realities in a very certain place and time, and a historical life expectancy that is no longer the case. And so why would we be pegging our hopes and dreams to our neighbor's car or a government's death table or, a million other things? Like we should be really having deep conversations and being deeply thoughtful about these things.
Well, and then we need to figure out how to get the software to focus around you wanting to spend more time with your family, not pick an age at which income is going to be self-sufficient.
Right. Yeah. So it's deeper than most people give it credit for, the sort of what do you want conversation.
Which is a great segue into where I hope we get to spend a lot of time is, the book is broken up into 50 different chapters or lessons or topics of discussion. And I'm sure everybody that reads this is going to have their favorite. I surely have mine that I want to talk about. But first, I want to know what yours is.
Mine, the most
and I
personal,
have my copy right here, so
yeah, the most personal to me is Health is Wealth, because it was about a health scare of mine that ended up being no big deal. But that was
Good.
seemed quite serious at the time. Maybe giving is the path to abundance, though. That was
Yeah.
another one that I wish the world would embrace that lesson.
Yes. I fully agree. And the health is wealth is on my list. I'm an active guy. This is Wealth on the Move, the podcast. We've been talking a lot about wealth and not as much about the move part as I would have liked when we entered this venture. But the health is wealth is important. I think that we all unfortunately take that for granted when it comes to physical health, mental health, doing things that we know we should do, and it kind of falls in line with our money. We know that we should have a budget. We know that we should be saving and paying ourselves first, and we don't. We also know that we should be eating better and taking a walk every day, and we don't. And there's a lot of commonalities that I find between the two.
It's interesting. Last year I went on a pretty significant health journey. I lost 60 pounds last year.
Wow.
So I lost 60 pounds last year, the good, the old fashioned way. And if you had asked me why I was overweight, I started April 1st of last year. And if you would, on March 31st, if you would ask me like, hey, why are you overweight? I would have told you bad genes, unlucky, whatever, because I was working out 7 days a week. I mean, I for a decade, I had been in a habit of lifting weights and working out. And the reality was I did two things to lose 60 pounds. And, in however many months it's been, nine months.
Yeah.
I tracked my calories and I ate enough protein.
Yeah.
Two simple things. That's it. Like I eat a lot of protein and I tracked my calories. And when you started tracking calories, you see all the sneaky ways you sort of lie to yourself, or you just don't know about something, or you don't count something. And it's like money is the same way.
Yes.
There's so many people, like it's not complicated. And if you had asked me, hey, does calories in, calories out work? I would have said yes, but I understood it intellectually, but not personally how it applied to my life. And so I think there's so many parallels to our money where it's easy to know what to do, but it's hard to do the right thing. And it's hard to hold ourselves to account. And it can be easy to say, I don't know where the money goes. Just the same way that that I didn't know where the calories were coming from. The average person misestimates their calories by about 1,000 calories a day.
Holy cow.
And that's what I was doing. And the same thing happens with our wealth, right? We know what to do, but until we have a process, until there's an awareness and there's a process, it's easy to lie to yourself.
Well, and then, you don't know where the money goes, and that's leading into a rapid inflation like what we had 2 years ago and last year. And now you really don't know where it goes. You didn't have a handle on it before, and now, that silent thief is coming in and taking 10 or 12% more. And, all of a sudden your credit card debt or you're going away from accumulation and in the other direction. So I broke my favorite chapters down into two very different, two categories. First category, you'll probably notice a theme here, has 4 chapters in it. Comparison is the thief of joy. The Joneses aren't that happy. You are not your things, and not caring what people think is a valuable asset. And, we did a series early on when we started this podcast or rebooted this podcast about kind of lifestyle creep and money dysmorphia a bit. And those 4 were important to me because of what you kind of just said. We're gauging our financial success off of our peers' perception of our financial success or what we think is going to make us happy.
That's right.
So those 4, especially, as a parent trying to navigate this world with three little men following in my every move, trying to get them to think differently about that what is important. Why do you think we go down that path of comparing our wealth or our things to our neighbors or our friends?
So when you start to study what we call behavioral biases.
Okay.
What you see is that almost every single one of them is a tendency that serves us well in some facet of life that we overextend or misapply to the world of money. So when you think about humans are animals, but we're going to get deep here, Will. So,
Yeah.
humans are animals, right? And when you think about the rest of the animal kingdom, why are we the top of the food chain? The reason that we are not fast, we're not strong, we don't have sharp teeth or, shells or fur or any of the things that we need to
I'm going to
survive.
imagine this goes beyond our opposable thumb also, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's not opposable thumbs. It's not even communication. Communication, bees do it, dolphins do
Right.
it. You know, the thing that we do well is that we empathize with one another and we work well together, right? We work well together. And it's like, look, if there was one monkey and one human on a desert island, right? On a
Right.
deserted island, um, my money's on the monkey to survive, the next 10 years.
Right.
But if there's 100 humans and there's 100 monkeys on an island, the monkeys are dinner, right? Like we are going to work together, we're going to figure it out, and we're going to run this island. And so this is the thing we do better than anything else. We empathize with each other and we work together to build churches and governments and economies and civilizations. And because we're so empathetic and we're so able to see ourselves in another person, we're the top of the food chain and
Yeah.
we're ascendant and we do all these beautiful, artistic, gorgeous things. But that same tendency is the reason why when you ask me what I want, I kind of look around and see what other people have and just go, oh, well, I guess I want what they have. And if you say, hey, is your life a success? I go, well, I mean, it's not as successful as my brother-in-law, or,
Right.
it's not as successful as my sister. And so this tendency to see ourselves in others makes us capable of great beauty and great cooperation, but it also makes us capable of making the wrong comparisons and failing to run our own race, and failing to sort of compete against ourselves instead of trying to compete against other people.
Okay. Well, which is a great segue to my second set of two chapters that are my favorite. No one gets rich alone.
Yeah.
And the most important financial decisions aren't financial decisions at all. And again, I mentioned this earlier, probably one of the most important financial decisions that I have ever made was who I married. We see the world through the same lens. We see money through the same lens, and communicate well. And we unfortunately have seen the fallout of folks who that wasn't the case for, and how expensive the splitting of the things can be, and what kind of financial disaster that can entail. And no one gets rich alone. I can't talk enough about it. The team that we've assembled at our office and how we're growing, and not only how they're helping us grow a business, but how our team is helping our clients. And through their efforts and helping them maintain wealth and grow wealth is important. So you just mentioned that, and what makes us the top of the food chain is our ability to work together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to the first chapter you mentioned about sort of every decision being a financial decision. I think this is not one that people think of always.
No.
And we tend not to want to pollute our ideas about something like love with something as banal and tasteless as money.
Right.
But the reality is, again, like I said from the outset, it's the number one cause of divorce and separation in North America. And it matters. When you pick your partner for life, you're picking someone with whom you're going to do a lot of stuff
Yeah.
together. You're likely going to raise a family together. You need to be, romantically compatible. You need to be compatible from a raising children perspective. Potentially, you need to be compatible financially.
Right.
And so we're asking a lot of that person. But one of the reasons I like writing about money, in some ways, I'm really bored by money. I mean, I'm a psychologist. Like
Right.
you see all my ink blots. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess we're on a podcast, so it's not a very helpful comment, but
Watching on YouTube, you can
yeah,
maybe write down what you think you see behind Dr. Crosby and
that's
send
right.
it to him and let him tell you about yourself.
That's right. So, yeah, I've never really considered myself a finance person. I mean, I
Okay.
consider myself a psychologist who happens to work in finance, but the thing about it is money touches every part of our lives.
Yes.
It's the number one cause of stress in America. And if you look at the number two and number three causes of stress in America, it's work and the economy. So
Right.
it's money, money, and money.
Right.
It's like money where you make your money, where you spend your money. So getting, since money touches every part of our lives sort of becomes fair game for someone like me or someone like you who is helping people, because when your clients come to your office with a concern, it is both always about money and never about money.
Right.
Simultaneously.
Yes. Yeah. So through your books, through your research and studies, what advice do you have for younger folks, or high earners that are aspiring to really be wealth builders
Mhm.
and want to create that level of wealth where they find satisfaction?
Yeah, so I would tell you that, I think your question is a good one, and the word satisfaction is key.
Yeah.
If you're seeking to optimize dollars, you will never be satisfied because there will always be someone richer than you.
Sure.
There will, I mean, it
I
is
mean,
just
even billionaires say you're always a billion short, right?
right. I mean, they're just will.
Right.
There will always be someone richer than you. So if you are optimizing strictly for dollars, you're just not going to be happy. You have to optimize for true wealth. And I get at that through a couple of angles in the book. But in chapter 1 of the book, we talk about research by Martin Seligman, who's sort of the father of positive psychology. And he has these 5 facets for living a good life. And just briefly, it's, deep work, relationships, meaning and purpose, working for something bigger
Yeah.
than yourself, advancement, which would be like self-improvement, and then fun and leisure. Money is really good at one of these things. Money is really good at fun and leisure. Like driving a McLaren is totally fun.
Sure.
Right? Driving a McLaren is awesome. And if that's your goal, I don't begrudge you that. But it is one facet in 5 of a happy life.
Right.
And it's not going to help you find God. Like it's not going to help you be better at your, at being a human being. It's not going to give you something bigger to work for. It's not going to be deep work. It's not going to make your kids love you. All of these things, we have to think about spending money and accumulating wealth in ways that feed life in the most enduring ways. Stuff, fun, leisure, and attainment are one piece of a much more complicated puzzle.
Right.
And I think we over index and over optimize on that 1/5 of the happiness equation and sort of let the other 4 go. And then, even work scratches a lot of those itches. A
Yeah.
lot of those things I just talked about, work meets those needs nicely. And so a lot of folks are sort of in a hurry to retire from traditional work. And then they go, oh, well, now I have no one to talk to. And I'm not working on, now I'm not working on big projects and I'm not part of a team and I'm not getting sharper. I'm not getting better every day. And they wonder why, people in retirement are by and large really unhappy.
Right.
Because they haven't planned for these other facets of true wealth, and they've over optimized for just, what money can buy.
Yeah. You're going to be the second guest that I bring up this movie to. Have you seen the movie The Intern with Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro?
I've not.
So he's retired and his wife passes away and finds an opportunity to be a senior intern. And by senior, they mean senior citizen, at a up and coming tech company, and sort of helps Anne Hathaway find her way into running this company. It's a really good movie and touches on a lot of what you just mentioned with where, folks retire and they feel like for a little bit they're playing hooky and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, now what do I do?
Right.
We have a little bit of Q&A for you. actually 2 Qs and 1A that we're going to get. You're going to get to ask a question, I guess. My first question is what's your favorite book about money that you didn't write?
My favorite book about money that I didn't write. I'm going to say there's a lot, but I'm going to say The Hour Between Dog and Wolf by Coates. And this was an
Okay.
interesting book that looked at the physiology of financial decision making. So this guy was
Physiology.
this guy was a pit trader who went and got a PhD in something, right?
Okay.
Neuroeconomics or something. And so he was studying the ways in which things like rest and hunger and exercise and fatigue influence the way we make financial decisions. And long story short, um, it all matters. Back
Yeah.
to this conversation about how everything and nothing is a financial decision. It's you start to see how things like getting to bed on time, exercising, eating well, all of this plays into creating a life worth living and
Yeah.
creating a sound financial life. So there's
So that
lots
was
of other
The Hour Between Dark and Wolf.
dog and wolf.
Dog and Wolf. Okay.
Mhm.
Dog and Wolf. That's going to make it to my list here. I thought you were going to say The Psychology of Money. That was
Well, The Psychology of Money is fantastic, but
yeah.
it's sold 7 million copies. It's no longer a secret.
Yeah.
The Hour Between Dog and Wolf is more of a secret. Morgan has made plenty of money
Well,
on that book.
hopefully enough people listen to this podcast that The Hour Between Dog and Wolf is not a secret for
Yeah.
much longer.
Yeah, it's a great book.
I can't wait to check it out. All right, so we have a little tradition that we do on Wealth on the Move that I have completely stolen from the Diary of a CEO podcast. On the Diary of a CEO podcast, their host asks their guests a question from a previous guest. And then I'm going to have you ask a question of our next guest.
Oh my God.
So
it's great.
And there's some episodes that it's just Bryn and I that record. So our last guest was an attorney by the name of Ashley Sherrick. And Ashley is doing an incredible job with her business and really revolutionizing the way that that folks go about getting the legal documents and legal processes set up for their wealth. And going beyond just selling gold-plated paper, as she refers to it as, but actually having a process of making sure things are updated. But her question was, if you could tell somebody starting out something you wish someone would have told you, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, I think to bet on yourself and take risks early is something that I would tell my younger self. I think we live in a world, and I think that AI will hasten this, where the last remaining work to be done is going to be deeply creative, deeply personal, high touch, white glove work. And so I think the days of getting sort of 9-to-5 W-2 employment and staying there for 40 years are over. And I think the most successful people are going to be the ones that are truly and wholly who they are, and people who bet on themselves, people who kind of fly their freak flag and are not ashamed to be, their own sort of brand of individual weird. And so, I would say, look, stop trying to get on a track and just go blaze a new trail.
Yeah. Well, and which you've done where companies like Orion are finding the value and need for a chief behavior officer. And I've connected with some more of your staff that we're going to try to have on and talk about some of the, things that we can accomplish with the, monitoring the behavioral stuff. But what you said is exactly right. Why I love owning my own business and having our team is, I don't have to wear a black, gray, or navy suit with a tie and a white shirt and brown dress shoes and every day, and can do the things and practice the way we want to practice and, fill the holes that we have seen in the wealth management profession. All right. So now it's your turn. What question would you like to ask our next guest? Now, and you're going to get a bit of an advantage than any of our previous guests so far, because we know who our next guest is going to be.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I am going to tell you that it is another author.
This is a question I love to ask.
Okay.
How are you most likely to be misunderstood?
Wow.
This next guest is messing with a shrink.
I stopped writing the question and I was trying to think of how I would answer that. I think I come across as a lot more crass and mean than I am because I'm very direct, probably direct to a fault. And it's made to seem that my heart is a lot colder than it actually is. And that's maybe a defense mechanism, but we can get into that in a private session later, I guess.
Right.
How are you most likely to be misunderstood? That may make the Hall of Fame here by the
good one.
By the end of this. That's excellent. Well, any parting thoughts? Anything that if somebody were thinking about, should I pick up The Soul of Wealth? Why would you tell them to do so?
Well, I would tell them that, again, money touches every part of your life. Figuring out the X's and O's of how to spend, save, and invest your money is actually quite easy.
Yeah.
But
it's not too easy. They still need to use good firms.
They still need help. They still need help. Right. With appropriate help, it's easy. Like figuring out the technical piece is not all that difficult. But figuring out how to let money live in your life that maximizes your meaning is a lifelong pursuit and a much more imperfect and a much more winding road. And I hope this book will be a guide to them on that road. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
I know it will be. Again, as someone that's read plenty of books about money, of both the X's and O's and, the emerging discussions around the psychology of money, this book will do that. It's a very easy read. Any place in particular, they should pick it up. I got my copy on Amazon. I'm sure that's the path of least resistance for most of us.
It is.
Well, Dr. Crosby, again, it was so great to get to meet you a few weeks ago. Even bigger pleasure to have you on the podcast now. And I look forward to our paths crossing again soon and hopefully have you back on soon to talk about the next book.
Well, congrats.
Is that what's happened? What are you working on next?
Oh, so I shouldn't even say this. We're breaking news here. So I have completed a next book, and it's
awesome.
It's all this one just came out last October, but so this won't be out till 2026 at a minimum. But it's all about meaning and purpose. Nothing to do with money. Just
wow.
Yeah, no money anywhere. Just how do you find your life's purpose and live it? So this is very much the direction I'm headed.
Can't wait to get it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. If you have any questions or would like to reach out to us at Wealth on the Move, the podcast, please check out our website at hoffmanwealth.com. Or as always, you can find me on LinkedIn under Will Hoffman, AIF. Until next time, keep your wealth moving.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Hoffman Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.